Hi, everyone. This is the Data Community Office Hours. I'm Shelley Reed, the Ellison Tap Manager. We are just the platform for the community, and there we have Mary Johnson, who is helping to lead the group, and I'm going to turn it over to her. And we have Jessica Price, who is going to share some things for you. Um, for everyone who has been trying to get into our new discourse forum, we are working on it. We will be sending out more information over time, and we'll eventually go down to just the discourse forum and no longer be using the Google group. But let's get back to our subject at hand. And Mary, would you like to introduce us?
Absolutely. Well, hi everyone. It's so nice to see all of you today. A couple on camera, always exciting. I'm really excited to introduce Jessica Price, who's the Director of Analytics and Insights at Maryland Legal Aid, who's going to be giving us a presentation on data dictionaries and data glossaries today, really more so on the glossaries. But Jess is just such a wonderful member of our community, and we're really lucky to be able to be hearing from her today. So Jess, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Always great to be here. Really excited, actually, it's a full circle moment to share about our progress and the work done with this project of the data glossary, because I'll mention it a little bit later, but I'll spoil the surprise ahead of time that this was actually a project that I fielded to the community forum to help me in thinking about this project early on. So just really excited to share what's been worked on. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And I will do my best to try to keep an eye on the chat. And I'm also gonna turn my camera off so you don't see me looking to the side, but just wanna make sure that everyone can see the creating a data glossary
We
on the
can.
screen. Perfect, amazing. Okay, so let's get started. All right. So what I want to do and hope to use our time today around is sharing a little bit about why a data glossary, the role that it can play, and the thought that we had when we decided we were going to embark on doing this project. Some steps that I took in developing the data glossary that we currently have, and actually will do a demo for you all today with the tool that we ended up deciding to use, which was Microsoft List. And I'll have some demo data that you can actually use after I walk through the steps if you've never worked with that tool, so you can practice offline. And then at the end, we want to have time, as always, to just open up the floor to the group so we can just have open discussion on what you're hearing today, share your experience with this type of a project, just to help the community be successful if they're looking to adopt a project, an initiative like this. So I thought we'd start off with just seeing of the members that are in the room, if you could just drop in the chat really quickly of these 5 options, does any one particularly resonate with you with this particular topic of glossaries and dictionaries? So one being heard someone mention about a glossary, may have looked into how go about creating one, but haven't necessarily taken that leap. Joined in helping to make a glossary. Oh, all right. I see working on one now. Amazing. Been the main person in charge of putting a glossary together, and this is a totally new topic. Hey, Lana, amazing. Oh, lovely. Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to have everyone in the room to talk more about this. And awesome.
Before you get going again, Jessica, we have at least one person saying that they're not able to see the screen. So I just want to see if maybe it is an individual issue or if there are multiple people.
I can see it. Might
Okay.
be on their end.
Then I will work directly with that one person.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the engagement, and excited to hear you've looked into it, been a part of a project. Really excited to and have more conversation about this, because it is definitely a leap So I just also wanted to, because I know this information and a lot of our presentations are shared out and are a resource. So for us, the scenario I wanted to share and why we even decided to go ahead and start to think about defining our data in this way and building out our glossary. We were starting to work on some varying projects at the organization. So I'm at Maryland Legal Aid. And so our department, our data analytics work, we've done a lot of and continue to do work with data, but this dedicated data analytics space was new to the organization. And so one of the first things we really realized early on as we were starting to work on our projects is the conversation around, well, what does this term actually mean? Or what are we saying when we're talking about these very specific things that perhaps existed in our CMS, which we use Legal Server, or just ongoing conversations on topics around the office. And so because of those conversations and because it was sparking really good conversation, we realized it would really help us to create this glossary. And so these are some of the key areas that I feel like resonated with us when we were thinking of taking that commitment to build out a glossary. So standardizing our terms, creating a central space for all of our definitions and data definitions at the organization, really to be that source to know if I'm speaking about this thing and I'm not sure if this is the most up-to-date terminology, this is where I can go to get that answer. Also, really to help in supporting our data literacy initiatives at the organization, really to give everyone confidence that when we were talking about the different data points, that we could with confidence say that we were all speaking the same language. And if something didn't align, we had this place to start as the starting point of the conversation and figure out where we needed to move to better improve and define those terms. And then ultimately, it will also work towards our support of our work in creating data governance and giving us that record of more of the details to some of our data attributes. And so one thing early on also that I was familiar with was data glossary, data dictionary, and data catalog, but I still wanted to do a little bit more digging and say, well, what is the differences and what is the right fit for us with where we were at that time in starting this project. And so wanted to share a table that gives a breakdown of the differences that my understanding and the differences I was finding when we were saying we wanted a dictionary or a glossary. Is it a glossary? Is it a dictionary? And for me, with this particular project, I knew that because the focus was for all of our users, that it was a good place for us to start with the data glossary, but that there were also some elements that I was needing for my projects and some of our team that did some more of our technical engineering work that could really value from having more details labeled out that spoke more to a dictionary. So what I'll share a little later on in the demo is how I found what I consider a happy medium between the glossary and the dictionary, but really the focus was on getting clarity around terms and creating and building out the glossary. And so these were some other items I was considering and thinking about when I was starting to build out my plan in creating our glossary. I was thinking about our organization's size and complexity of some of the definitions and the data points that we were wanting to capture in this glossary form. I was thinking about where are we realistically in our data maturity, and really more so in when I'm speaking about our maturity, just how are we interacting with our data? How are we using it? How are we talking about it? Where were we at in our data culture? And and that overall spoke to thinking about the data maturity level. So still along the lines of this helped me to really reinforce that I felt continue to feel more confidence in starting with the glossary versus trying to embark on some of the other tools that I know will definitely add value, but just that still helped to solidify that we were at a good starting point with the glossary. Um, I also was thinking about the organization needs and pain points, and pretty shortly I'll share more about the process that I took and give some steps that I break down that was helping me to think about how to go about executing this project. So I was hearing a lot of pain points and questions specific to we think this definition may have changed, but not exactly sure how to trace that down. Or, I heard it might mean this particular thing if we were speaking about a specific term in our database, or just overall conversation around it's not really easy to make sense of this particular definition, and it would really be helpful for my work if we could have some internal conversation to really clarify. And then the last one was available resources and technical expertise. So that really spoke to did we have the skills internally and the capacity to move to build a more or use a more sophisticated tool, if you will, that had a lot more of the bells and whistles and the elements that when I was learning about, you know, a tool that was designed for to be a data glossary, was that something that I could easily manage myself, or was I going to need a team of people, and then also costs associated to purchase a tool if we were going to, go outside of what was currently available to me internal from tools we had available. So now just going to jump in. If you're getting started, which I know from our poll earlier, sounds like most people have already jumped into this process. But if you're early on, here's some steps that I took to get myself started and execute this project. So started with setting my goals and objectives, and wanted to also use this as an opportunity to plug the project management group. Because I think that was a big part of it. Was I really looked at this as a project. So I wanted to set clear, defined goals and objectives and what I wanted to see happen for this project. And then I had to think about how much time do I actually have to commit to do this project. I knew it wasn't something that I could stand up in a month or two. So I needed to, get some buy-in to say that this was going to be, a multi-year or multi-month project. And I think that really just depends on with those goals and objectives. If it's a small data set that you're trying to work to start with, that might not take as long. But if you want to start to build out in different data sources and look at a database that you've had for several years, that might take you a little bit longer and might give more value to spend more time if possible. So then once I moved through those steps, I went to the discovery phase. And so I mentioned earlier, started reaching out to stakeholders internally, but also used this actual data group to field, has anyone worked on a project like this, and any thoughts and ideas on how I can get started and any resources available to me. But during that discovery phase, it was also finding out, were there some existing dictionaries and glossaries throughout the organization that we might want to centralize into this one particular tool. Then as part of my planning, I also needed to think about how often I was going to need to update this. And that's where also the commitment and lift came in. So really that, even I'm looking at it now, I looked at this a few times. I feel like that could be bumped up before I even hit discovery. as far as like setting up my project plan. Also thought about my audience. That came into play and was really helpful when I start to share some of the elements of the glossary, but that helped me to figure out how did I want to use the tool in the user interface to group certain terms, thinking about the audiences and also getting feedback from them on how it would be helpful for them to look at the information in the tool. Also thought about what data elements I wanted to capture. That particular one became really helpful when I was thinking about what were the differences between my glossary versus my dictionary, and if it were possible to marry the two into one place. And I believe there was, for me, what I found a happy medium. And yep, and defining the categories that fell into part of identifying my audience. And so I have a couple examples I wanted to share just to spark some inspo ideas. So this first one actually came from Susan Vincent from LAFLA. And so this is also built in Microsoft List. So earlier I'd mentioned about the categories and groupings. So we'll be able to see this in the live demo that we do, but being able to toggle through some of these different groupings differentiates some of the different terms that you might see. So I found that was something I wanted to be able to offer to people when they came to the glossary, is that they didn't have to scroll through, rows and rows of terms. They could, drill into specifics based on what they needed, and didn't want people to be limited in what they could have access to, but also these groupings will give some flexibility to what other filters and columns the person could see. And the other thing I was looking for that I really liked with the list is that I could do these color coding, so conditional formatting, and also use some choices, choice fields. And so that made it really easy to make revisions and organize the definitions as well. And this was interesting because there's with Tableau, like they have a newsletter that's visuals of the day. And so this popped up in one of the visuals, one of the months. And I thought this was an interesting thought, and don't know if anyone is doing this or thought about this, but building out the glossary in a BI tool like Tableau or Power BI. And so what I really liked about this particular example, and something that I think about a lot with my end users, is the ability to easily search for terms. And so just wanted to call out, I thought that was a nice element of this particular visual. And then this is also another from Tableau, but this actually is something that I was able to achieve in Microsoft List, and it was hyperlinks. So being able to say this definition is coming from this particular document that a lot of times for us lives in our SharePoint, which we call briefcase. But just nice to be able to have that option to say this is where this term is being sourced from. So if you want to get back to the actual document that this is being retrieved from, you can, use a hyperlink to get to that. All right, so now we can get to some fun stuff. So just being mindful of time. So still looks like we're good on time, but what I wanted to do was take a few minutes to just share the steps that I took. And these are a couple of the items that I want to be able to demo for you all today when I was creating Microsoft lists for my glossary. So because I don't trust myself, I did a video recording of the import, and then I'll move over to lists so we can see after the import happens. So this is just an Excel doc, which I do have a copy of for everyone. And I'm going to work with Shelley and Mary to make sure that we can make this available if anyone wants to download this, this data. It's just some sample data of definitions I put together. So this is in an Excel sheet, I find it easy to create it as a table first before I go to do the import. So that's what's going on here, is just setting up the table before I move over to list. And so once that's all good and done, so now we're in list. So the first thing is just create new. I'll pause there. So you have a few options when you're getting started to set up your list. So you could always build from an existing list. You can go from one of these blank templates they have for a form, the gallery. These are at the top when it says create from blanks, the views. So you have a list, which is what we're going to build out. Gallery, which is kind of cool. It looks like these cards. You can do a Kanban board or set it up as a calendar. That one's probably not a great visual for this use case, but it could be. And then at the bottom, it's kind of cut off here, but there's also some pre-built templates if you were to find a format there that you would prefer and then do your import. You have that option as well. And I went with the import from Excel for this particular project. And so just had that Excel sheet that I formatted, and now you have the import. And so before you actually go to do the creating of it, what I like to do is go through, and I've seen this in some other interfaces, but go through and say like, well, this isn't a single text. I will want this to be a actual choice. So it's already creating those categories for me ahead of time. So I just went through in a couple of those and set that up. And then once you go through, you go ahead and click that next button, added a title, and then click create. And in a couple minutes, we will have our glossary. All right, so not ready for questions yet, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can go ahead and swap over to Microsoft List. And everyone is seeing the list now. Working. I think we're
Yes,
good.
we are.
Perfect. Thank you. Oh, I see hearts. Okay, good. Thank you. So yeah, so let's go through and adding the view. So that's the first thing I had on my list. So you're here, your technically your glossary is here. So the first thing you're going to see is all items. So all of those fields that were in the Excel table are now here, but let's say for everyone, you only want them to see maybe title, similar terms, description, and maybe grant association if that one's here. So maybe that's all you want people to see, or maybe business usage. So the first step, which you'll want to do, is add a view. So we'll call this test one, and you can select list. So now you still have all of your columns. So what you will want to do, and I think there's more than one way you can do this, but I go to add and remove fields. So going through and just checking out. Oh, status might also be a good one. I like to use status if I've uploaded a term and maybe it's under review or it's no longer active. I have this as a status field was nice because it gives me a way to filter out maybe inactive fields or to call out ones that I'm still working on a review around. So I'm just going to click off all of these and then apply. So now when someone comes in to look at this glossary as a viewer, they can toggle between all the items or just come and see the ones that I've identified I want them to look at. The other nice thing when you use these views is you can preset the filters. So if maybe you had a particular grant where there were specific terms associated, and so you wanted to make a view that you could specifically look at the data points or definitions associated. You could do a filter by and say, I only want to see grant A. And so now that's applied as a filter to that view. And it went back. So I think you have to save it, but you do have an option to save that that current view. So you'd have to actually go in and say save view to hold that filter. And the nice thing is you can always undo that or delete it. So that was a nice feature that I liked with using Microsoft List. The other two things I wanted to show, I wanted to be able to have a way to track changes. So I wanted to know maybe client ID, we made some change to it over the time period, and I wanted to be able to track when that happened, who made those change, who made the request, or what kind of the process was. So what I decided to do was use this comments field, because what I like is that it'll leave, I think it leaves my name, but it definitely leaves the date. And so that was something I found really useful, so that I could see some history on a particular definition. And you can go back in and edit, and you can also delete. I don't know if people can add comments to your comment. So it would just kind of be a running list. And the other thing that I thought was really a value add for using lists was this attachment option. So when you go to edit, then I have the option to add as many attachments as I would like. And so I thought that was really another benefit to using Microsoft Lists when I was trying to figure out what attributes and features that I want in the product that we decided to use. But while you're here, you can always go in and make changes at this point in the editing side of things. And I think that is it for now. Any questions, or was there, I can always pull up my screen again. Was there anything you noticed on the list that I had that you wanted me to talk more to or look for?
Jess, that was fabulous. Thank you so much. I was really curious about the field that was classification description. I love that you were like marking the fields that had like personally identifiable information. And I was wondering if you had like a set list of, I guess, like different terms that you were assigning for that column, or if you could just like talk a little more about that, because I think that's such a great feature.
Yeah, so for that particular column, I do not, because it it was from when I was creating my demo data. And so what I probably would do though, and I think if I can recall back to my live glossary, I did go through and think about, and I still actively think about that one, are some classification details that would be useful. But right now, the PII was definitely one. And I will go back and see if I have like a list of what some of the classifications I'm thinking about, and I'd love to float it to see if any of them stick out to anybody or something's missing. That to me is, I also think, where the difference came in for the need for the dictionary versus the glossary. That's something that I really wanted and thought could be helpful, but knew like someone that just wanted to get like a quick understanding of a definition might be like, I don't need all those details. And that's what made being able to toggle between those views really nice.
Thanks, Jessica. That looks really awesome and useful. I'm kind of curious, in the process of building it, was there a reason why you chose to start it off in Excel and then import it to SharePoint versus starting it directly in lists?
Yeah, the biggest, that's a great question, because the biggest reason was for the importing tool feature. So that gave me, you can take like a group of terms and kind of go in and drop them in. Let's say you had a Word doc, maybe that you'd started from, or just had like the terms kind of floating around. You could go individually, and I'll show you really quick and do what is the edit in grid mode. And so once you change to edit in grid view, you go from here where you have to click to actually go into the row. You can come and directly go and manipulate the data here. You can also add columns. So when you go to add a new item, this is where you can go in and drop a bunch of terms, but it really was for the importing capability, is what made me start with using Excel. So I never used Excel for a long time when we were starting this project, but I also was able to compile everything there and then kind of start at one swoop, and then go in and move through the data that way.
Right. And from my own experience working on what I think is probably more so a dictionary versus a glossary, but even still, like to create a lot of data, and maybe you want to like, you know, click and drag to fill all the cells that are like Boolean data, or, you know, copy and paste. Like I do think that kind of data creation is a lot easier in Excel, but once you get it into SharePoint, you can sort of make those edits, but I don't think you could like sort and kind of click and drag and copy as easily as you could in Excel.
Yeah. That's a good point too.